Welcome to EB-5 Essentials. I'm your host, Edwin John, Director of Business Development at US Immigration Fund. Today, we are diving deep into the EB-5 landscape and understand how it is changing and how US Immigration Fund as an entity is changing with it. I'd like to begin by introducing our speakers today. We have Nicholas Mastriani III, our President and CMO at US Immigration Fund, Akshat Gupta, Vice President, Business Development for India and UAE. We also have Sheikh Musa Njay, our Vice President for the EMEA region. With that, I would want to step into the agenda directly. So let's start with the bigger picture, Nicholas. We have got boots on the ground in each of the markets when it comes to EB-5, right? I would like to hear from you more about why this step has been essential and what is the strategy behind it.
Of course. Well, thank you for putting this together. To talk about a little bit of our global footprint, we've been in EB-5 for about 15 years now, and we've really focused over the last decade and a half on a few specific regions around the world. But as you know, EB-5 does not discriminate, right? EB-5 is available to investors anywhere across the world, as each of you are very well aware. For the first 8 to 10 years, a heavy part of our focus was mainly in Asia. We came to India back in 2017, I want to say. And then globally, we did receive investors from about 32 countries over the time frame, but we never really localized that well. We work with immigration attorneys, we work with different representatives from different marketplaces. But in the last 3 years or so, 4 years since post-RIA, we have really taken a focus on being hyper-local in each local economy, in each continent, in each country and region where EB-5 investors come from. So we've been really developing the team, and because what our investors want is they want someone local. We work with agents and finders and wealth managers and educational advisors, attorneys, immigration attorneys and such all over the world. But having local experts in the marketplace, some for many, many years, like my friend Akshat here, who joined our organization and work with us for a very long time. Because the EB-5 process, it takes years for our clients, and having someone locally that they can turn to in their time zone that speaks maybe their language, if that's the case, is something that's very important. And we've grown to know that over our near 15 years in business. So as of late, we've been really growing the team, growing the local expertise. And you're going to hear from some of the guys today who are out there and abroad.
Thanks, Nicholas. That actually throws a lot of insights to how we are changing as a company and evolving. This one's for you, Akshat and Musa. The two of you all are heading regions, right? I would want to hear more about the fact that how does being present in the local markets help you face the real challenges and help investors kind of overcome those?
Sure. I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Musa. Firstly, pleasure to be here along with all of you. It's going to be an amazing time. Answering your question, Edwin, since you're based out of Mumbai, I'm based out of Delhi, especially with the Indian clients, right? There are a lot of local laws, government laws, fund restrictions, right? So when you look at the India market in specific, you have something called the LRS, right? So you've got a $250,000 remittance limit every financial year. You've got certain laws like FEMA, which is like the Foreign Exchange Management Act, and then you've got something like a 20% TCS, which is levied on outward remittances. So a localized presence also helps investors to understand that while they're investing in EB-5, they not only have to comply with the US laws, but they also need to comply with the local laws at the end of the day, because that's what compliance is all about. Right. So let me give you an example, Edwin, especially with the Indian clients, right? Now we know that the Indian financial year is from April to March every year, right? You and I have been on multiple roadshows where we've met clients, and we specifically marketed in the month of Jan and Feb, because for every resident Indian, you have a $250,000 outward remittance limit every financial year. So how we've been tackling this issue or helping investors successfully guide them is by them remitting $250,000 before 31st March, and then remitting $250,000 on the 2nd of April. And that's $500,000 done within a week. So I guess with those specialized local expert guidance and advice, that's how we help our investors navigate through the process, and that's how they get they achieve success, whatever is desired from them. Having a localized presence, therefore, then helps us to do that. And it's a good touch point, right? Everyone likes to feel special, and that personalized feeling is always something that investors appreciate.
Of course, of course.
I mean, well, first of all, thank you for having me in this podcast, in this episode, and look forward to doing many more episodes with this great team. Yeah, I mean, that is really something that is really important. Having a physical presence in a market allows the clients to feel actually personalized. Like this person is here for me, knows what I'm dealing with, and knows the market, and this person can guide me throughout the process. I don't know what the end result will be in the US and all that, so this person is here when I need him, when I need to speak with him, and he knows the reality that I'm dealing with. As Akshat mentioned, there are some reality that Indian nationals are facing in India. Same thing with every market that you go to. If you go to Nigeria, they're dealing with a lot of inflation is quite high, and they want somebody who knows the reality of the market, the currency depleting, going down, and all that. Those are things that they want to be, things that they want us to know, and then be able to talk to them about and know, okay, what is the advantage of you doing the EB-5? What are you going to get out of it? So those are reasons that this implementation that we're doing, being global, is really going to benefit us in the long run.
Got it. Thanks for those insights, Akshat and Musa. Very detailed when it comes to that. Nicholas, this one's for you, right? The team, especially the leadership team, has been around for 6 to 10 years, right? How has that kind of aided in order to kind of build trust with investors? So I want to hear from you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, we can talk about, as we will, our project selection and how we operate the business in EB-5 and what all the security measures and things we put in place. But one of the most important things of all that is people. EB-5 is a people business. People from the point of, we're in business to help our investors and their families succeed in the program, but people from the point of the organization. So I mentioned we've been around for about 15 years. Everyone in the organization that comes to our organization, we're very fortunate. We invest in our people. They come, they stay. They join us for a long time. They're part of a bigger family, if you will. And that's the way we feel about our investors as well. Our investors come to us because this isn't just an investment, like other things in the world where you can invest and make a return. This is a life choice. Right? This is people's future, their children's future. So it's a very important thing, and we want them to be treated with that kind of regard and that kind of respect. So when it comes to our team, right, globally, you said 6 to 10 years. We have many team members, especially that worked on our Asia partnerships, that have been there for more than 12 years, 13, 14 years even. And then the average time frame is probably that 7-8 year mark, because we want people to stay for longevity. As I mentioned before, the EB-5 investment cycle, it isn't 1, 2, 3 years. For many investors, it can be 4, 5. In certain countries, it can be even longer than that.
Absolutely.
And they're being able to look to the same person, Akshat, Musa, Edwin. They can call you, they see you today, in 4 years from now, they can still see you then, and kind of guiding them through that progress. So we have a global team of, probably nearly 60 professionals, both on the US side and internationally. So the handoff there is, today they're in their requisite country, wherever that may be, and they're working with someone, whether you or our Latin American team or South Korea or Vietnam or China or anywhere in the world. And then at some point in time, they're going to transition to the United States, and they're going to be there. And it's in a whole new world, right? Education, housing, employment, other investments, things that they may be interested in, or may have questions about, frankly, because it's a new world. So having that, develop a team that is here for the long haul with us is of the utmost importance to us. And what we pride ourselves on, frankly, is people that join us, and it's not a revolving door. They come and they stay for quite some time. Of course. Isn't that right, Akshat?
Yeah, I'm going to step into it, but I'm waiting for Edwin to ask because I know he has a few questions.
Yeah, of course. And it's really commendable that a company of US Immigration Fund's stature is not only looking at business, but also the softer aspects of, kind of maintaining relationships, may it be with employees or may it be with their investors as well. So that's really commendable, and I would really want to, hats off to that. Akshat, I would really want to hear from you about your journey with US Immigration Fund over the last 3 years. How has that been?
I think it's been beautiful. It's been special, honestly. I joined in December 2022. I think the relationship was very Natural, because I heard of something called US Immigration Fund in 2018 when I was just fresh out of college. And I think that's when I met you, Edwin.
Talk to me about it.
Yeah. So we've known each other. You and I have known each other since 2018.
Yeah.
And I've known obviously Nicholas and the entire family, and I call it a family. And every time someone like Musa, like you, and everyone else who's joining us, we always tell them welcome to the family, right? And I like to go on record and say that since day one up until now, how time's flown by, I haven't really realized. I'm going to finish 3 years very soon, and it's super, super special. We treat everyone like family. Everyone's given that kind of respect. And as you said, right, like when you're speaking to an investor, every investor asks me, how long have you been with the company? And when you say 2 years, 3 years, 7 years, 10 years, a good regional center wouldn't have a high attrition rate, right? Because
Absolutely.
if you're not good with your people, then how can you be good with your investors? So I think that's and I have to specially thank Nicholas for everything that he's done for all of us, and we're always grateful to him for that.
Absolutely. In fact, I can actually relate to this because, as I said, as Akshat brought this up, right? We met in 2018. This is my second stint with US Immigration Fund. So when I got to know that I'm probably getting an opportunity to get back into the EB-5 space, it had to be US Immigration Fund. And I can totally relate to that. We put our employees and our investors first, and that's something that, as I said, is really commendable. Musa, you've been in the EB-5 space for over a decade now, right? How does this kind of stability impact investors' journey is what I would want to hear from you.
So EB-5 is a relationship business. We meet people from all around the world. We meet people that we never expected that we will meet in this journey. And that is something that makes you stay in this industry. I mean, the relationship that you create is very important. You meet people from different sectors, different industry, and you get to know their family. One thing I got invited to, for example, to one of my clients of a long time that actually have a great relationship with. His son is getting married in July. And one thing that usually people don't invite guests is the traditional wedding in Nigeria. And I was invited to the traditional wedding that they're doing to be part of the groom's family.
Lovely.
So that is something that is really great and that I'm really thankful to be part of. And that shows that, okay, we're not dealing with numbers. We're dealing with people's feeling. We're dealing with people's emotions. They have goals for their kids. We're here to help them. They come to us whenever they need something. In the middle of the night, somebody can send you a text message. Hey, they are in a different time of the world. And then you respond to the text message. And that is something that they like about it. That's the reason why I've been in this industry for all this long time. I have never been interested in going to a different industry because I'm really, how can I say it? Everything is good to my end. I like it and I like to stick in this. And I found a great family with US Immigration Fund. So I'm looking forward to the next 20 years with this company.
Great.
Yeah.
That's a big commitment.
Indeed.
And
You have the same commitment, right?
absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I came back, right? So the thing here is we talk about building relationships and all of this, which is very important when it comes to a business like EB-5. I really want to hear from you, Nicholas. What is your definition of success? How do you see success when it comes to this particular business?
That's a great question. It's defined, I guess, in several ways. But really, ultimate success, we've been fortunate enough to see quite a bit of it. We've had nearly 6,000 investors and their families come through our programs, throughout all of our EB-5 investment opportunities. And probably one of the most rewarding things is when I have a family that comes to my office. A husband, wife, 1, 2, 3 children, whatever it may be, that has gone through the process, and now they're in the United States. They're living, they've localized, as the American life. Yeah, they're there. Their children might be in school, whether that's the 4th grade or now going on to college, and then come in and they just say, thank you. It's a very daunting. I just had one recently, so I'll use that one as an example. It was a very daunting choice for them to do EB-5, and not because of the investment amount. This family, they had enough liquidity to be able to do so, but the fear of the future, what's to hold. What are my children going to do? How are they going to adapt? Neither one of them. The husband spoke a little bit of English. The wife, none at all. Like how are we going to adapt to the United States society? How are we going to live here? How are we going to drive? Read the street signs? All of the above. but they're flourishing. They're absolutely flourishing and loving what they're doing in the United States. So yes, their investment went well and the jobs were created. Therefore, they got their green cards and permanent residency. But them living there and really living the American dream, or whatever that meant to them, is really how I define success, I'd say.
Yeah.
And we've seen that now thousands and thousands of times. So, of course, there's taking the right measures, doing the right thing from a project structuring, being there no matter what. Not every project's going to go perfectly.
Absolutely.
But if it doesn't go perfect, what do we do in the wake of that? And how do we manage and handle that? And we've been through that, right? We've been through COVID. We've been through economic times of ups and downs from 2008 until today. So we've clearly been through it all. And it's really what we do to protect them. But at the end of the day, success is seeing them achieve whatever their dream may have been. And, fortunately, again, like I said, we've seen that thousands of times. So that's probably the most rewarding factor to me.
I'd like to add something, and I really love the perspective that Nicholas gave here, right? Because at the end of the day, when we speak to clients, it's just not about getting your green card, getting your money back. It's about what are you going to do after you reach the US, right? So those questions are always asked. What is your kid's future? When you move, do you have a plan? Do you have a business? So those are important things. And you can get your green card, you can get your money back. But if you don't have a job, if you don't have a living, what are you going to do in the US?
Yeah.
So that I really love that perspective, that at the end of the day, for us, success is ensuring that our clients have a stable future and they're happy in the US and they're living the American dream, as Nicholas said.
And to add to that, I can actually relate to these conversations is because of the fact that when we get on calls with investors, we start the conversation from, what's your objective, so that we can understand how we can handhold the investors through their journey. Having said that, yes, we understand that, we've grown today globally, but it's just not about a matter of scale. It is about being close to investors, understanding their psyche, understanding their emotions, and how we need to kind of handhold them. I would like to zoom out here to kind of talk more about what are each market saying, because now that we are building a relationship with each of these investors, I'm sure we are hearing a lot from them about each market's in its own, in itself, right? Great. Musa, I want to hear from you with regards to Africa as a market, right? What are the micro markets within Africa where you're seeing growing demand, and what is the reason behind these growing demand for the EB-5 from African investors?
So the primary markets in Africa are Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt. Those are the top three markets in the whole continent. But right now we're seeing a growth from different countries, especially on the eastern part of Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, and we're seeing some from Rwanda and Uganda. Not many, but here and there. I've had a client that I'm currently talking to who's in Cameroon, one who's in Kenya that you've helped with, and one who's from Ethiopia who lives here in Dubai that I've met with. So there are several reasons why some of them are leaving their countries. They wish not to leave their country, obviously. But for example, if we're using Nigeria as an example, several reasons are in place for people that actually are deciding to get their family out. Insecurities is one of the major reasons why folks are leaving. I'll use an example of a client. He has 7 kids. They live in a big mansion. What he told me, in confidence, is whenever my kids go out, they have to have a driver and securities and a patrol. That is something that he didn't like. And whenever he goes out to the US with his family, they're free to go wherever they want. They can roam around the city. They live in Houston. They can roam around the city, go wherever they want. They don't need security. Whenever they come back to Nigeria, he's freaking out whenever his son goes somewhere. So that is the reason why he decided to do EB-5, because he wants those kids to have the freedom to live comfortably. Himself, he said, I am used to this. I can keep on living in Nigeria. That's not a big deal. I've adapted and I've made my fortune in this country, but I don't want the same thing for my kids. I want to give them plan B. So that is one reason. And so you have the inflation. The exchange rate just keeps on going up and down, especially in Nigeria. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the Naira was probably close to less than 1,000 Naira for 1 USD. Right now, the Naira is 1,600 for 1 USD. And it's aiming to go close to 2,000 Naira. So with that, if you have USD, a lot of them are just interested in investing it and getting into the US market because the value of the dollar compared to their local currency is just keeps on growing and growing and growing. So those are one reason. If you go to South Africa, depends on the origin of the investor. You have investors who actually insecurity is really big in South Africa also. Recently, we've been seeing in the news a lot of killers. You hire people to actually just kill someone. We've been seeing that a lot of them, especially wealthy individuals who own taxi company. Just a big mafia in that place right now. So because of that, some people just want to get their kids out. You want to just get a plan B. If something happens, you need to get out. Same thing in Egypt. Insecurities, but also the fact that the USD is going down, the local currency is going down, but restrictions that they have, political restrictions. So India right now is run by a military government, President Al-Sisi, who did a coup and now is running the country. Because of that, a lot of folks felt insecure. So majority of them are leaving in the Egypt to relocate in the UAE, Kuwait, certain countries.
Yeah,
But still, you cannot get the citizenship on those countries.
absolutely.
So you're always in this country on a limited timeline. So they prefer to be somewhere that they can use as a backup. They have documents, they can get the citizenship, which is the United States. The United States is welcoming. Everybody can get the citizenship after 5 years of residency. That's one of the biggest things that you cannot get in the regions that those folks are trying to get into. You cannot get the citizenship in the UAE. You cannot get the citizenship in Kuwait. If you move to the US 5 years as a resident, you get a citizenship. And you have access to almost everywhere in the world. You can travel wherever you want. So those are reasons why people are deciding to relocate into the United States.
So we've got insights from India as a market, Africa as a market. Another huge market for us from a US immigration standpoint is China and the ASEAN region, right? Nicholas, you've been in China in the early days. I really want to hear from you. How has the sentiment changed for this particular region from an investor standpoint? How is it creating urgency? What has changed in the recent past, in the last couple of years? I would really want your insights on this market as well.
Sure. So, we've I've spent the better part of a decade and a half in the Asian regions and primarily in mainland China. However, the differences today compared to what once was is really on every single market. So we talked about Africa, we talked about India, but in these micro markets, really the global economy is a market. It's just an education factor. People around the world don't know what EB-5 is. They don't know how approachable it is and how frankly, with proper source of funds and background information, how simple it is. It's one of the only programs globally that has such certainty with, that if you invest and you create the jobs, you can and will reside in the United States, not only as a permanent resident forever if you choose, or ultimately obtaining citizenship in the United States. And what we've seen in the Asian markets, particularly, and now sometimes a little in India, is that from the demand, it's generating a backlog. It's generating a wait list of visa priority. So in many countries around the world still, frankly, the majority of the countries around the world, you can invest today, file, and be in the United States, living, working, etc., within a number of months. Because all you have to do is wait for the timeline it takes to process your actual EB-5 petition. In some of these other countries, there's such an abundance of interest that there's an actual visa quota backlog, whereby you file, you could get your approval for your I-526, which is your EB-5 application, but you're still then waiting to receive a visa to actually travel to the United States to get that green card and that conditional residency. So although that is happening in some of the countries around the world, we still see huge demand. At a point in the past, there were thousands of investors, literally thousands of investors looking to file petitions on a monthly basis out of mainland China alone. Never mind the balance of the world. And today we still see that demand. But as we talk about currency restrictions and economic uncertainties and inflation, deflation of currency, or of actual value in real estate or other places where they liquidate capital to be able to make this investment, that China has seen a significant amount of that uncertainty, whereby real estate was once, inflated 10, 15, 20 times, and they could refinance property, sell property to find liquidity, to invest in EB-5. Today, there's a lot more uncertainty with that. We talked about $250,000 per person per year. Restrictions in India. In other countries, that could be 50,000. That could be 15,000. So there's a lot of things that need to be looked at when making an investment. It's not as simple as, yes, I have the capital and I can invest.
Yeah.
That's why when we talk about this localization, we have experts and professionals in this industry and other partners, right? Whether it's attorneys, financial advisors, tax advisors in the local markets for our investors to be able to consult with and figure out the most efficient way to make their investment. Whether that be partial investment, which I think we'll talk about a little bit today as well.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Investors can invest a portion of the capital required and file their petition to get that spot in line. Because again, the longer you wait, the longer it will take. We do know that much.
Yep.
If you file today, exactly how long will it take me? There's really no crystal ball.
Yeah.
But we know if you file today, it'll be a lot faster than if you file next month.
Time is of
6
essence.
months. Of course, time is definitely of the essence. And we have a certain runway with EB-5 that's applicable to us. We know certainty around September 30th, 2026 as a cutoff date, or September 30, 2025. But again, sooner the better. And that's why this local presence really helps that. So in mainland China, we have nearly 15 representatives throughout the country that are localized, that many of them have been there actually more than 10 years. They've been with the company. They understand the nuances. They know all of our professional partners and affiliates and attorneys. And then we have South Korea, Vietnam, other areas around Asia and Asia Pacific to really localize again and give that expert guidance and advice to an investor and their family when they're looking at making this type of an investment.
Great. Akshat, I want to talk more with you about, so you and I, we get on calls with Indian investors, right? The beauty about this is that we have spoken to investors based in India, as well as we've spoken to investors who are based in the US already, right? What is the stark difference that you see when you deal with these two different type of investors?
So let's just start by saying that India continues to be one of the biggest markets for EB-5. One of my favorite lines is, the US continues to be a land of opportunities, and India continues to deliver and seek those opportunities as and when they come their way. I think in the changing landscape of how the Indian market has responded, especially in the last 2 years since March 2022, is right now there's this provision of being able to file a concurrent adjustment of status for those people who are currently on a valid visa category such as the H-1B and the F-1. You look at the H-1B visa, 80% are Indian applicants. You look at F-1 students, 75% are Indian students in the US. So how you and I have seen this landscape change in the last 2 years is, since this provision is now there for people, we've seen a huge demand from people in the US on an H-1B and F-1 wanting to file their EB-5, Indians in the US. And of course, like as you mentioned, right? So when we are on these calls, we just don't talk to someone who's an Indian in India or an Indian in the US, but we're sort of dealing with Indians all across the globe, right? So you and I get on these calls, whether the investors in Singapore or in Hong Kong, doesn't matter. In terms of profiling, if you see 50% of our clientele is parents who are filing their EB-5 for their children. Where are these children? They're in the US. They're studying in the best universities, doing the best courses, who want the best future for their kids, right? Let's talk about H-1B as a specific visa category, right? Now, we've seen a lot of layoffs that have happened in the US. A lot of companies have been laying off people left, right, and center. And these are the big companies like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, the biggest of the world that you can talk about. And that's precisely why an H-1B visa holder needs that security. And that is where EB-5 gives you that security, because you can't plan a future, you can't buy a house, you can't plan a living until unless you have a secure future in the US. So those are a few points from an Indian market standpoint. Just to summarize, you've got the LRS, you've got the FEMA laws, which are locally there. You've got huge layoffs in the form of H-1B, people who are on an H-1B in the US. As Nicholas rightly mentioned, that there is an annual quota or a cap, right? So every country gets a 7% quota. You have about 700 visas per country, which is why every Indian who you and I speak to are rushing in to lock in their priority date, which is why, again, as Nicholas said, people want to probably make a partial investment, lock that priority date, and then obviously seek a defined timeline to fully fund their investment. So that's a little bit about the India market. We'll talk about the staggered investment, obviously, in greater detail as we go forward.
Absolutely.
I want to give a shout out.
Sure.
Nigerians have become the most educated foreigners in the United States. So And professional level, Nigerians are number one right now in the United States.
Okay.
Shout out to my Nigerian brothers.
Nice one. In fact, what we've understood here is that investor needs across different geographies vary, and we being available in each of these regions has kind of aided to that, right? But one thing that remains constant, not only in the EB-5 industry but investments as an industry on the whole, is the trust factor, right? When it comes to EB-5, apart from trust, it is also how the whole transaction is structured, how we are able to handhold and personalize the whole experience. It kind of only adds that much more value. Having said that, there are, apart from we as a regional center bringing in the investments to the investors, there's a very important stakeholder that I think we should talk about, is the relationships that we build with attorneys, because they are the ones who kind of file the applications, do the source of fund vetting for the investors, and are with the investors throughout the cycle of the EB-5 investment. Here, I think the next segment that I would want to focus more about is how US Immigration Fund as a regional center has been able to kind of nurture and grow relationships with top immigration attorneys in the EB-5 space. Okay. EB-5 investment in itself is a life decision, right? While we as a regional center kind of educate most of the investors from an investment standpoint, one of the key elements which is overlooked is the filing process, which is basically done by your immigration attorneys, right? They are the ones who actually work more closely with investors, helping them with the source of funds, with filing the application, understanding the family dynamics, and structuring and strategizing the filing of the petition. I would want to talk more about, and this goes to all three of you all, right? As to what emphasis does US Immigration Fund kind of focus on when we are onboarding immigration attorneys? What is the kind of experience that we actually look at when we are partnering with attorneys in the industry? With that, I would want to hear from all three of you all.
I think let's start with Nicholas on this. Nicholas, you go first.
Sure thing. So, over our time in EB-5, we've worked with dozens, maybe 50, 60 plus immigration attorneys. There are hundreds or maybe thousands of immigration attorneys around the world. Not all specialize in EB-5 though. So really what you're looking for is someone who knows the nuances of this particular program, because there's a lot that goes into it. It isn't as simple as some of the other immigration filings in the United States for whether it's student or business or other employment-based categories. EB-5 is very technical. So although there are many of them, it's really ensuring you're choosing one that is close to the program, is close to the changes, is seeing what USCIS is asking from a source of funds background or background information, because it isn't as clear as we'd hope it to be. It is constantly an evolving legislative program where the policies and program is often changing and updating. Luckily in the U.S. law, in U.S. government, law and policy changes don't go backwards, meaning retroactive. They are always kind of grandfathered through that point in time. So as long as the attorney is up to speed on what's going on and what's changing, then they're always going to have their best interests and their best knowledge in front of them. The way that we work with attorneys is we're ensuring that they have everything that they need to make a petition on behalf of an investor. So a petition is literally, this thick. It can be hundreds of pages. As a regional center, as a funding company, and a manager of that investment, we provide a template of that document. So it's streamlined. There's continuity, there's consistency for every single investor in a particular project. The package looks the same besides their individualized information, meaning their source of funds, their own personal background, their family history. But otherwise, we know when that's adjudicated and processed by the United States government, it is the same every single time. There's a policy called deference in U.S. law, meaning that once a petition is approved or under a particular project that you've invested into, the U.S. government will give it deference, meaning they will approve all subsequent petitions, only contingent on the investor's background. So for us, that is very important. And for our investors and our attorneys, that's very important, because we know once one is done, or even if we have a request for further information, which is called an RFE, we provide that response, and then we know there's certainty around the processing of the immigration petitions from there on out. So the way that we work with these attorneys, and Akshay and Musa, you guys can talk about this, and Edwin, We really provide a turnkey solution for them from a regional center and an EB-5 project standpoint, so that they have to just focus on the important factors around the investor's background and the investor's documentation. All else is really taken care of for them. And when we go to the localization, as we've been talking about, is having someone present in every one of these countries, in every one of these markets that someone's in. You have a counterpart. The immigration attorney has a partner in this process throughout the journey, and that's one of you professionals and one of our other team members around the world.
In fact, that answers my second question, which I was about to ask, as to how important it is for a regional center and an immigration attorney to be in sync. Because you have investors asking questions all around the place. Akshat and I, and I'm sure Musa as well, would agree that, quite a few times investors ask us questions which are very related or needs to be diverted to the attorneys. So you actually answered that as to why is it important for the regional center to kind of work in sync with the attorneys. But I would want to hear from Musa and Akshat as well about this.
I mean, of course, we have to collaborate with the attorneys because the EB-5 is, you have the immigration part, you have the business part. We handle the business part. The immigration attorney handles the complex part of immigration and source of funds, tracking the source of fund, the pathway of the funds. All of that needs to be done by an experienced attorney. I've been lucky throughout all these years to have worked with several attorneys that are pretty, I would say, one of the most experienced attorney in the EB-5, and we get to learn from them. All of us know some technical terms through the program, I-526, I-829, the way it goes, but we are not those professionals. We still are not immigration attorneys, so we have to give them let them do their jobs, and then assist the investors and guide them through the process of the complexity of the immigration process in the United States. Those attorneys are essential. And we are always open to work with any immigration attorney who is willing to work with us. We will make the process easy for them. As Nicholas mentioned, we provide them with a turnkey process. We give them everything. The template is ready, then they will just have to include the individual's documentation and make it easy for them. So that's the way we are carrying on doing business with the attorneys, as we always kind of make it easy for them to do it.
So, couple of things that I want to add, right? So, I guess just like you can't have a bike or a bicycle run, or like basically without two wheels, those two wheels are the regional center and the law firm.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right?
Yeah.
So you can't do an EB-5 until unless a regional center and a law firm are in sync. That's as precise as it could be. From a relationship perspective, I want to go on record and say that we at US Immigration Fund have opened arms to every immigration attorney that has come our way through directly or through, let's say, an investor's choice, right? Let's understand that the beauty about the EB-5 visa program is the investor chooses their regional center, their financial advisor, and their immigration attorney. There's no regional center who can just say that you can't work with a particular attorney. And similarly, an attorney saying you can't file with anyone is again very unprofessional, right? So we want to say that we're open to working with every immigration attorney that exists. There are few that we work with. There are few who we might not know, but we're always open to that. In terms of sync, right? At the end of the day, it's all about relationship, right? So as Musa mentioned, as Nicholas mentioned, an investor would have a successful EB-5 petition only when the regional center and the law firm go hand in hand, right? And that's when we try and spend time with attorneys, we try and get to know their journey. And it is, frankly speaking, a very, very important job. And often investors don't realize the amount of effort that an immigration attorney puts, and also probably don't take their recommendations or requests seriously, which again they should. That's something that I wanted to mention in terms of immigration attorneys and how regional centers work in sync.
Great.
And also, sorry, just one more point. Like in terms of keeping immigration attorneys involved throughout the subscription process, right? So all of us here, we're dealing with different investors, but when we do the onboarding process, we copy the immigration attorney. When we have a funding deadline, we give the immigration attorney enough and more time so that they're aware of what is expected from them. And I think at the end of the day, it all boils down to good communication.
So for investors who are starting off with their EB-5 journey, what are some of the key questions that they should be asking the attorneys that they're working with?
EB-5 is very complex. immigration in the United States is very complex. You have to really take your time to choose your immigration attorney. I would not recommend any client to be dealing with an attorney who doesn't have an experience in the EB-5 program. It's very essential. We are welcome to work with any attorney, but if the attorney doesn't have an experience, we would recommend co-counseling with them. So need to know the track record of that immigration firm, that immigration law firm, know if they have done EB-5 in the past, what is their success rate. You would ask us the same question. You would want to know if we have done EB-5, and you would know our track record, because that's essential for any prospective investor. Same thing is to be asked to the immigration attorney. What is their track record in the EB-5? How many petitions have they filed? If they have not been successful, are they willing to work with attorneys who are experienced, who will be guiding them through the process? Those are critical. And I will not say that is really critical, but yeah, if they can give you some financial advice, if they can work with some financial advisor onto the pathway of the funds, those are essential. The source of funds is really complex. So you need to be dealing with an attorney that has that experience. EB-5, again, is very complex. So deal with a professional.
So thanks, Musa, for those insights. Akshat and Nicholas, I would want to hear from you specifically from your markets as to how an immigration attorney and USIF as a regional center working together has helped investors, move on with their journey in the EB-5 space.
Sure. Let me give you an example. We had an investor. So there was a couple in the US. They had a child, and there was a risk of the child getting aged out. And it was a matter of days, right? So had the I-526E petition been filed a week later, there was certainly a very good likelihood of the child getting aged out eventually. And that is where the relationship and the camaraderie between the regional center and the law firm came hand in hand. So we supported in whichever ways we could. We gave all the package, as Nicholas mentioned, to the law firm, and that timely petition today resulted obviously in the investor getting their green card and being grateful to both, not just the law firm, but the regional center as well. So it's all about the relationship at the end of the day. And examples like funding deadlines or let's say a child aging out are instances where a good relationship between the two entities have helped investors achieve success.
The only thing I would add to that, Edwin, is that this is EB-5 as a journey is a long-term partnership. It's a tri-party or even four-party relationship that can last up to a decade, realistically, depending on where the investor is coming from with their family. So it is just really critical that you choose a team that knows what they're doing, that has the experience, that's been in the industry, and will be in the industry in 4, 5, 8, 10 years from now. U.S. Immigration Fund, we do EB-5. That's what we do. We have a 60-person global team that's been in this industry since 2008, 9. And we will be in this industry for as long as EB-5 exists. And even then, beyond that, for our clients' needs and what they need in their investment projects and in their immigration goals. So we work with the attorneys. So it's the regional center, the attorney, the client, and maybe their advisor, whoever is referring them to this program. And we will be together for many, many years. And we talked about this being a family and what success looks like. Success looks like the end. A return of their capital, successful residence in the United States, living, thriving in America, whether it's for their whole family, for the children, whatever it may be. So choosing a partnership of a team that's here today and going to be here in the long haul, that's what's important. Because EB-5 is, we started in this business, there was maybe 5 or 6 regional centers active, maybe 30 are authorized by the US government. That went to more than 1,000 regional centers at a point in time. And even today, it's hundreds. With several dozen, really doing the primary amount of the business and the amount of the immigration into the United States. So it's choosing someone that's going to be here, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And that's what us and our team are. And we're happy to work with attorneys all over the world, with our clients through that process.
Great. In fact, I would want to go back to Akshat's analogy of the bicycle, right? And that's the bicycle that takes us to the end, as what Nicholas said, of the journey of EB-5. One more thing that I would want to emphasize on is at US Immigration Fund, it's not just about selecting the right project, but selecting the right team. And the team involves us as the regional centers and also the attorneys that we work with. With that, I would actually want to zoom out and move into the next topic of conversation.
So,
here.
with your due permission, Edwin, I just
Sure.
wanted to circle back on one of the questions you asked, which is what are the right questions? And I just want to take a minute on that, not more than that.
Sure.
I think it's a very clear-cut distinction between what does a regional center do and what are the questions you need to ask an attorney. So, questions on immigration, questions on how do I liquidate my funds? How do I move my funds? What are my immigration restrictions, my benefits, my green card timelines? These are clear questions for the attorney. Questions like, where is my money going? How is my money going? When is it going to come back? Who's the developer? What is the regional center's track record? These are questions for the regional center. So when we get on a call, questions which are addressed to us are answered by us, and questions which need to be answered by the immigration attorney are directly directed towards them. Because it's not like we can't answer them, but I think it's best if it's answered by the person who best specializes in it.
Great. Couldn't have been more crisper than this.
Thank you.
Great. With that, I would want to kind of move to our next segment, which is the highly talked about the $5 million gold card and the viability of it along with the EB-5 program. So that's our next segment, and we'll be talking about that. So in this segment, we're going to talk about something that differentiates the headlines from the facts. There has been something which has been creating a lot of buzz in the EB-5 industry, which is the gold card, right? And the $5 million investment that is required to be done there. Nicholas, this is specifically to you. We would want to know more about what is the gold card and how is that going to kind of make a change in the market if you see that happening.
Okay, that's the $1 million question, or the $5 million question. What is the gold card? So the gold card today, it is a proposal from the current administration as a means to mitigate the deficit, the financial deficit in the United States. It isn't law, it isn't policy today, but it's an idea. It's an idea to again help mitigate the debt. I look at the gold card as it's not an alternative program to EB-5. EB-5 is a real incentive driver in the United States since 1990. It is an established certain program with policies and real achieved success to date. Right? It's something that we know. Although it's a changing policy and legislation, it has certainty. The gold card has been talked about as an alternative to EB-5. It has also been talked about as potentially taking away visas from the category. I think it's realistically more so it's a complementary immigration channel to EB-5. And I don't think it will replace it entirely. Everything that we're seeing in legislation and policy is that we could bring it as a complementary use, but it's not for all investors. Many of our investors to date, very few of them would frankly qualify under that program or actually be seeking for that program. It's been talked about as a residency status in the United States that would have an investor or individuals or families that are living and residing in the United States to not be required to pay U.S. tax, for one. And that's really probably the most attractive component to it. However, it's a $5 million investment that you do not get back. It's $5 million invested into the United States government, if you will, as a sunken costs. And that's really not a platform that we see across thousands of investors just through our own platform, never mind globally through EB-5, something that would be of interest to them. And today, again, as I said, it is an idea. It's a proposal. It will have to go through the necessary channels. The administration today, Trump could take an action that would give it a temporary authorization or create some means or channel by which it could actually exist in the short term. Many professionals think that it could take a year or longer to implement, but the reality is things do happen overnight in this administration, and it is a possibility that it could come online in a much sooner time frame. But again, what we know today is EB-5 exists. EB-5 is a viable means, and it has a set investment threshold, which was once $500,000, and then $900,000, and then $800,000, and a moving target, and it could quite go up again. As the government is looking for ways to minimize expenses and maximize, revenues globally. We see this conversation about tariffs, very large tariffs globally. deflation and inflation of currencies against the United States dollar. The biggest thing that we do know today is we can stress a time of urgency. What we know is the EB-5 program exists. It is a viable means today. It has relevant certain timelines. So for people that are looking to move forward, really the only answer we have is don't wait. You don't know what the future will hold. The program is currently authorized through September 30th, 2027. However, it talks about grandfathering of petitions, so meaning changes to the policy that could come later could affect anyone who files after September 30th, 2026. So that only gives us 18 months from today. With 18 months, it's still not a choice really to wait. If you're serious about EB-5 for you and your family or your child, now is honestly the time. Because what has happened with the gold card is it has absolutely poured fuel, gasoline onto the fire from interest globally. Investors worldwide, where all of a sudden, our phones, our emails, our team globally has been demanded, every single day with folks that are interested in the program. And they're interested because they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And that's a fact. We don't know what's going to happen with the gold card. We don't know what's going to happen with the EB-5 program in the long term. EB-5 has been called a pilot program or a temporarily authorized program forever, since its existence, 35 years ago. We've lived through multiple reauthorizations, 5-year reauthorizations, 3 years, 1 year, time and time again, short-term reauthorizations, and that could happen again. There is a real likelihood that the program could change in a big way, from an investment standpoint, from a job creation, from a requirements, from a language obligations, and all of the above. This could certainly happen as we move forward. So time is of the essence. Is probably priority number one, I would say, today.
Absolutely. That answers a lot of questions that our investors would have from a gold card standpoint. In fact, this one's for you and Akshat and Musa. Specifically, I would want to talk to you guys have been doing EB-5 for some time now. There have been changes which have happened in the past and now this proposed change, right? I would want to hear from you what has kind of changed back then and what should investors learn from that change that happened in 2019 and from what is proposed now?
So, in my opinion, it's better to deal with the beast that you know, because you never know what the program is going to be in the future. With the years that I've been in this industry, I've seen several changes. We've seen reauthorization of a couple of months, of 1 year, 2 years, 5 years that we have seen in 2022. In 2019, when the Department of Homeland Security figured that they wanted to change the program, they came out with a policy change. They increased the investment amount from 500,000 to 900,000 and 1.8 million. Some investors, during that small gap that we had between the change being announced and being implemented, we've seen a rush into the industry. Everybody just wanted to jump in because you wanted to benefit from the 500,000 investment before the change happened. There's a $400,000 added on top of the 500,000, so you want to get in, get on the line. That's something that I'm also going to mention today. If EB-5 is something that you're looking at, do it now, because as I said, it's better to deal with the beast that you know. You don't know what the future is going to be. We have 18 months, but also we are dealing with an administration that can change things on a blink of an eye. So right now we have a current program that is running with the possibility of you being grandfathered in. So get in as you can. If you are short in capital, reach out to us. We have ways that we can assist you in terms of loans and so on and so forth, so that you can get into the line with your family and secure your position. 2022, we've seen the gap between 2021 to 2022 where the program lapsed. And the Congress decided to work on the program, and that's when we came up with the $800,000 investment and $1,050,000, with the guarantee that by the time that the program is reauthorized, it will be adjusted based on inflation. So changes are going to happen, no matter what, whether it is with this administration or through Congress. We are going to experience some changes in the program. Not saying that the gold visa is going to be implemented, yes or no, but right now we are to deal with this the way it is right now. So my answer and my way of guiding you is just go ahead with what you know right now.
Akshat, your thoughts?
Sure. I think the first thing that a couple of investors need to know is that an executive order cannot just stop EB-5 tomorrow, right? EB-5 is a law. If there are changes that needs to happen, it needs to go through the House and the Senate. And an immigration law requires a 60 vote majority. So it requires a lot of people to come together and make a change in the law. Another aspect of this is, I guess in 2017, when USIF entered into India, at that time, the idea was to educate people about EB-5. I think what you, I, Musa, and Nicholas are now feeling is that now is the time to again re-educate people.
Yeah.
Because we're meeting people, and the first thing that they're saying is, but isn't EB-5 already gone? Right? So people don't know the nuances. They can't be expected to know the nuances. And I guess this is probably one time where awareness needs to be maximized. We need to go meet people and tell them that EB-5 exists and it's going to be there, and it cannot just go out of the part because via an executive order. So I think those are my thoughts on this as well.
Great. In fact, to add to what we've been speaking about is that, EB-5 is here to stay. It is a structured program. And I would certainly want to hear more from you, Nicholas, about how you see the future of the program.
Yeah, so just to follow up on what Akshat said, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There always has been, and there always will be. But ensuring to have clarity around, what is the EB-5 program and how does it work for an individual. So there's two tracks when it comes to EB-5, right? There's your investment in the qualifying project that you're making, and there's your immigration process that you have to go through. They are two separate tracks. Obviously, they go hand in hand, and success is found, via both of them. However, no matter what happens in the EB-5 program, no matter what the changes are, we talked about grandfathering, right? So changes that happen in the U.S. government happen on a go-forward basis. They don't look back retroactively. And for the most part, that always works out in favor of the investors. We saw the change through the RIA, which benefited from that point forward, which actually helped investors then, with simultaneous filing and concurrent filing of their petitions. However, one of the big things that we keep hearing about, out there today is, well, if EB-5 is going to go away or change in 18 months or in 30 months from now, well, what happens then? How do I get my investment back? Is it just gone? But they are two separate tracks. Your immigration timeline and your immigration process is governed under the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service policies. If the program, let's say in a theoretical world, it went away, the existing investors would still be adjudicated and processed. We've seen this happen previously. We've had lapses in the EB-5 program in the past. This wouldn't be the first time. Mm-hmm. And there's still funding within that department of the government to continue to adjudicate those petitions and process them to their finality. Meaning, if you're an investor who files today and the program went away, right, in a year and a half, 2 years, 4 years from now, whatever it may be, you would still be grandfathered under the program as it was when you filed your initial petition, and you'd see that through. Similarly, your investment is governed under contracts, under contractual obligations and law in the United States. So if you make an investment into an entity in a regional center that makes a loan to a project, that doesn't go away and is not governed by the USCIS policy or law or legislation being in place or not. So we see questions from investors today often, well, I've been told that if the program goes away, so does my investment. That's absolutely incorrect. That's misinformation. That's fake news, as the current administration would call it. Your investment is governed. It will be there. If it's a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year investment or loan, whatever it may be, it is governed under the terms of that agreement, and you'll still see a return of that capital regardless of the process and the policy in the EB-5.
This conversation about the gold card has been very critical because I totally agree that we come across a lot of investors who've been asking us since the time this announcement has been made. And to add to what Nicholas mentioned, it is imperative that the investors act fast in order to ensure that they are grandfathered and make the move and start off with their journey on the EB-5 investment side. Next, I would want to talk more about the kind of investors that we're dealing with today. And we see that investors are getting more smarter, more savvy about EB-5 as an investment avenue. They want to know what are the smarter financing options available. They want to know how their projects are de-risked. They also want to kind of have transparency when it comes to communication. Nicholas, this one's something that I would want to really hear from you as to at US Immigration Fund, how do we kind of do the project selection? What are the kind of measures we put in place in order to de-risk these projects? What's US Immigration Fund's lens while we are kind of shortlisting projects?
Yeah, sure. So, U.S. Immigration Fund, one of the things that we like to talk about is how we really institutionalized EB-5. When I say that, what I mean is EB-5 was once looked at as a place where you could fill in a project capital stack is what I'm referring to. So for a US-based developer who is going to build, whatever this project may be, multifamily, hotel, condominiums, anything, EB-5 was looked at as a means of capital that they could not get from anywhere else, meaning a bank, an institutional lender, a typical preferred equity or debt lender would not fulfill that in the capital stack because of whether it was risk, whether it was timeline, whether it was their track record, the developer themselves. And really, we looked at that as that's incorrect. EB-5, it shouldn't be that foreign investors looking to invest in the United States and migrate there are forced to invest into something that is ultra risky. In the EB-5 program, there's a term called at risk. The investment must be at risk. That does not mean it has to be risky, right? Extra risky, meaning at risk for significant loss. So the way that we look at projects is we're underwriting them from an institutional level. Most of our tranches, right, where we fill capital for a developer, we're competitive. We're competing with other lenders, other banks, other private investors, private equity investors, because they also would like to take the same position. So for our investors, we want it to be equally secure. So we're looking at projects and developers who have significant track records. Not only have they completed projects like this, typically for many decades, actually, our investment partners, our developer partners, they've completed projects of this scale and size. And frankly, most of the developers that we're working with today and that we're offering EB-5 projects and investments through, not only are they extremely qualified, very successful developers in the United States, but they have used EB-5 before. And that's important because EB-5 is not like regular capital. It isn't just I borrow it in this date and I pay it back on that date. There's a lot of reporting. There's a lot of requirements that are involved on the job creation, on the construction activities, on all of the spending, far more, frankly, than that of a traditional lender or a bank in the United States. So these developers that we work with, they understand that, they know it, they appreciate the process, and frankly, they're passionate about EB-5 as a piece of the capital because of the immigration benefit. Most of our developer sponsors that we work with, they really like that and they appreciate that and they deal with it, and deal with the requirements and reporting requirements associated with it. So we're choosing projects that we're able to be very picky. We've been doing this for 15 years. At one point, it was we were out trying to convince developers to take this as a means of capital. Now they're trying to convince us to underwrite their projects and give it to them, which is a nice place to be.
Absolutely.
Meaning because we have a captive audience of qualified, very highly qualified developers where personally I would like to put my money if I could. They are very, very savvy developers with protected investment positions. So our investors have certainty around the success behind the project.
Great.
And that's really the way that we look at projects today.
Great. In fact, Nicholas, I also wanted to talk about, you have been at the forefront of localizing the whole team, right? That's one of the reasons why we have foot on the field in each of the geographies that we're working in. And the whole idea behind that is to build trust when it comes to our relationships with investors. I wanted you to talk more about, and we would want to hear from you, how have you dealt with projects during the COVID times? Because at that point in time, it was an economic crisis, things had shut down. How did you revive and keep the trust with investors at that point in time?
So we've talked a lot today about localizing and how we have our business associates in every local market. Today we sit in Dubai. I have more frequent flyer miles than most people I think that I know. But I still come here, or my team members from the US will come here, or India, or China, or anywhere else. We come and we leave. We're there for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and we leave. And it's important to us and to me personally to come here and spend time and meet with our clients and our partners and our other associates. But having full-time presence in a market is such a critical component. because it's that relationship, right? So you asked the question about how do we deal with projects in a time like COVID, when we couldn't come here. Our team in the U.S. could not travel abroad to these places to be there, with our investors or close to them. Yes, there's virtual meetings, and we have Zooms and Teams and every other video platform you could possibly think of, but it's not the same as sitting, here, talking through what might be a very challenging conversation or a troubled situation. So during COVID, this took place. Every project, every investment that existed, frankly. It doesn't matter if it was EB-5 or non-EB-5, and it's not unique to U.S. Immigration Fund. It happened across the board. There were challenges. There were a lot of financial uncertainties. Projects halted construction almost entirely in almost every single state across the United States of America, whereby construction workers could not be working on a project, one, because they couldn't be in close proximity of each other, two, because the capital markets and the banking systems all but completely shut down, and therefore caused significant delays. If it was a hotel, people weren't traveling. They weren't even permitted to. And then when they were permitted, they still weren't doing it.
Yeah.
If it was a condominium development, they weren't buying. If they had originally intended to purchase, they were trying to pull out and not purchase because there was so much uncertainty about what was going to happen in the world. And that lasted for the better part of 2 years, really. And in some states, New York, for one, where we have a large portfolio of investments that we've made there, California, another location where we had a couple of investment projects, and other areas around the country. So what happened during that time frame was a lot of unknowns. We had projects that faced these challenges. We had developers that faced those challenges, and really, it wasn't if it was going to happen, but what you do when it does.
Absolutely.
And on that token, I'd like to talk about a little bit about one of the projects that actually faced that in the midst of COVID and how we dealt with it. One of U.S. Immigration Fund's projects dating back to about 2015-16 timeframe was a project called the Nassau Coliseum, and it was in Long Island, New York. This is a very notable project that U.S. Immigration Fund actually lent the money via actually a senior loan facility, which is the most prioritized in the capital stack. We lent them about $100 million to do a renovation of a very notable historic landmark in Long Island, New York, which was the Nassau Coliseum. The developer was a world-renowned development company, decades and decades of experience doing like projects at this scale, even actually significantly larger. And so we felt a lot of comfort and security in the project stack, especially being in a senior position. So we made a loan to that developer. They actually completed all the renovations, created all the jobs that were necessary through the timeline. And the Coliseum was home to about a 14,000-seat entertainment arena. It was home to a National Hockey League team. It had concerts and programming and all the entertainment venue items that you would see in a traditional venue across the United States. Then COVID happened. The very worst thing that you could possibly have as an asset during COVID was an entertainment venue that had concerts and events and the like. The development sponsor, I'll make a really long story short for purposes of what we're talking about today. The development sponsor ultimately decided they were going to walk away. They weren't going to continue to invest into it. They weren't going to continue to carry the asset, pay the rent to the municipality, millions of dollars of rent to the local municipality, the government there, millions of dollars in utility costs, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of upkeep and ongoing maintenance and security and all of the above. And every concert, every event that it had planned, they were all canceling. They actually had concerts and events during this period with no fans. So they had a performance on stage that would otherwise house 15,000 people with no one in the audience that was just live streamed. But those were far and few between. So the developer, the owner, of the actual Coliseum, decided that they were going to walk away. They couldn't service the debt. They could not, carry the costs. So what then? Now we have a $100+ million, debt to cure. We have millions of dollars a year in this asset that's ahead of us that needs to be paid to the municipality and the government authorities and everyone else, or else it would just be lost entirely. The government there would just take back the asset and the land, which they could have done. So at U.S. Immigration Fund, what we did was we talk about, many regional centers talk about the securities, the agreements, the contracts they put in place, the protections that in the event that something goes wrong, this is what they could do. But really, it comes down to executing and doing that.
Yeah.
And we did that there. we stepped in as an organization. We brought financial partners that had the financial wherewithal to kind of weather that storm with us and make it through COVID. We actually funded all the additional carry costs, all the operating costs and expenses associated with the Coliseum to protect the investment, to protect the security of the loan that we had made in the project. And we did that for some years, a couple of years through COVID. And what we did then was we positioned the asset for a sale. We protected the investment, we've identified potential buyers, and then we went through the process of transferring the asset and the sale of the asset to a third party, and we recovered more than 100% of the investment that we put into place. And we did that to the benefit of our investors. They could have been, all the headwinds were in our face, all the opportunity for complete and utter loss. Yes, the jobs were created and the green cards would have been secured, but they would have lost 100% of every single dollar they invested into the loan. And that is not something that we were going to stand for. During that time frame, the return or the way that U.S. Immigration Fund makes the margin or makes the way that we make money was that a developer borrows it and they pay us a piece to manage that investment. We were not making that all along the way. We were just doing that, again, putting our investors first. If we always have the mindset of let's put them first and how can we best protect and mitigate them, we think we'll always come out on top that way. And we were able to mitigate that, like I said, sell it and return 100% of all the capital to every single one of our investors in a project that otherwise would have been completely bankrupt.
That actually talks volumes about the way US Immigration Fund deals with these cases. And I'm sure out of my experience in the EB-5 space, I've not come across any regional center going to that extent. And that's commendable on the part of US Immigration Fund. Nicholas, I also would want to, in fact, I would want to open this to all three of you as to how are we prepared for the future? What do you foresee when you look at 2026, 2027, how is the EB-5 landscape going to change? If you have any sight of that, and how is US Immigration Fund preparing to kind of, tackle that? We have had wonderful experience with dealing adversities in the past, but what's in it for the future?
So what we do, being in the business for 15 years, is we continue to learn.
Yep.
Right? We believe we master, and we position things and protect our investors and structure the investments that are available in a way that is first in class. But we continue to learn every step of the way. And some of these adversities that we have faced have only given us the insight to better position and better structure and better plan for the future. And we think that we are poised to do so, as we have done time and time again.
One thing that I would like to add to that is we are in the business of just adapting to whatever the market is just shooting at us. We don't have 100% control over what the immigration process is going to be. USCIS will come up with policy and we have to adapt. So you have to deal with a company that will be able to adapt to every kind of situation. When we get to the level of any change that we're going to deal with, we will adapt our documentation and adapt to the new policy. But know that we are going to be here to help you, and we are going here to remain. We're always here to remain and adapt to any situation so that the investors are going to be safe. We will do our best to mitigate any risk as much as possible. Obviously, changes are going to happen. We are not going to run away from that. But are we going to adapt? Yes, 100%.
So I love how Musa said we're here to remain, right? And I think that sticks by all of us. 3 quick points, how we have adapted or how we are adapting. One is we've responded to the market's requirement of a rural project. So US Immigration Fund now has a rural project, which we brought to the market, which investors are looking at. Because certainly we acknowledge that USCIS has a priority processing. There is a 20% visa set aside. I think the second point is introducing staggered investments, where we are understanding that there could be a situation of a backlog very soon, and that concurrent adjustment of status won't be filed if that backlog kicks in. So we are one of the few regional centers that are helping investors lock in their priority date by funding as least as $200,000 to start your petition, and then obviously a defined timeline to make that entire investment of $800,000 complete. Finally, introducing financing programs which are qualified for US Immigration Funds projects only in the form of lending entities like Opportunity Fund Lender, where there are financing programs for qualified investors up to $400,000. at attractive interest rates. So I think these are 3 points. Requirements have been met, and as Musa said, I completely love it that we're here to adapt and we're here to remain.
Okay. A quick one to kind of lighten the atmosphere. We keep talking to a lot of investors day in and day out, right? I would really want to hear some very interesting conversations that you've had with your interactions with different investors. Akshat, we could start off with you.
A very funny anecdote. It's very clearly mentioned to investors, please don't wire funds until your source of funds are approved. I think 100 times it's been told to people, but yet I had a situation where an investor wired funds without their source of funds being cleared. And then we had to step in, help, do a lot of things to, make sure that those funds are done in the right way in terms of its compliance with the process. So yeah, sometimes we have those difficult instances as well.
Great. Musa.
Please don't try to invest with cash money. I've had an instance, actually, somebody asking me, can I actually bring cash and just be able to invest? I just told him, how will you be able to travel in the US with $500,000? So that's a lot of cash. So you're limited to $10,000, but please don't.
At least they tried to travel themselves. I was in Macau once, and I was met with an investor who had a duffel bag of cash and asked if I could bring that as the initial investment back to the United States. So that was an interesting one. I hadn't seen that before.
I'm telling you, it's really something that we're seeing. We have a lot of anecdotes, but it's an interesting industry, and we like it.
Of course, I can't deny that for sure.
One of the most unique ones I think that I've actually been experienced in was I met with a chairman of an airline company, and he was the chairman of multiple companies. Very, very wealthy individual. And as an incentive to the kind of C-level executive folks of his company, he wanted to bonus them or compensate them with every single person in the C-suite got an EB-5 green card.
Whoa.
So they wanted to create a structure whereby he could, part of the investment compensation over the next several years that they had was to invest in EB-5 for all of them. And so I thought C-suite company, what are we talking about here? 4 or 5 people? 34 people. He wanted to invest on behalf of 34 individuals in the EB-5 program to bonus them for a career given to his organization. Wow. I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's wonderful.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Akshat, Musa, and Nicholas, for your insights. I'm sure all of our investors would take home a lot of learnings from this. To all the investors who are looking at and viewing our podcast, looking forward to many more sessions of EB-5 Essentials. With that, signing off.
Thank you so much, Edwin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.